in the state of pure perception. Because one has grown to that state, you see, one has kind of, I just say, matured to that state of, like, blossomed to that state of pure perception. Just as when the flower blossoms, it is beautiful. It's not a fabrication, it's how it is. You understand? Like that. Your whole mind is open to that pure perception. That's why sometimes Tibetan Lamas say, you know, when you see, I mean, something I notice a great deal with some of the great masters, like my master Jaman Khyentse. This is such a pure perception. They regard everything purely. They do not regard anything, how do you say, in a negative way. Always everything is seen as purely. And so they always used to say, when a student who has really a good perception like that, they always, you know, how do you say, compliment and saying, he's got a lot of pure perception. He's got a lot of pure perception. Not that because he's kind of, how do you say, religionally he's trying to develop pure perception, but because he's actually realizing, you know, he's kind of got that understanding.
Sometimes the Hinayana path is known as the path of renunciation, and the outer tantras, like Kriya and Upa, are known as the path of purification.
So Hinayana and Mahayana both, Hinayana and Mahayana are both known as path of renunciation. Whereas the Tantra is generally known as path of transmutation, but the two of the first outer Tantras, Kriya and Upacharya, are known as path of purification. Then the Yoga Tantra is entering into the path of transmutation.
And here the example that Rinpoche used to give was a very common example that is used in the Nyingma tradition, that of the metaphor of poison and the reaction to that poison by different people.
Different people, yeah.
The first group of people, that is the Hinayana level, would look at the poison and really panic. It's terrible, it's poisonous. They would try to cut it and get rid of it.
It's because they realize the danger. They begin to panic. When they begin to see the poison, they begin to immediately panic and try to immediately uproot and cut it. You know? Cut it. That's like they're trying to cut the ego. Okay, that's like trying to cut the ego. Realize the ego is the poison, they're trying to cut it. But on the Mahayana level, which is actually the same as in Hinayana, in that it is primarily a path of renunciation, but the division is a little bit, how do you say, bigger or greater, or understanding is deeper. Realizing that just simply cutting the poison is not enough, it's only a temporary measure, that it will grow again. So one must actually uproot it at the very root of it. So what you do is you put, for example, like hot ash or hot water over the root so that it doesn't grow again. That's like realizing the emptiness, you know, which is like applying that kind of an antidote, or that when you have that understanding is applied at the root of that, you know, the poison, then the poison does not grow again. So that's how it is renounced. Whereas in the tantric approach, you see, it's like this poison is there, but the people who come there, the tantric practitioners, are like doctors or like alchemists who realizing, when they're seeing this poison, they don't panic because they have the know-how and the wisdom or the knowledge to how to make that into medicine. In fact, they are happy to see it because they see something, you know, how do you say, good raw material. You understand? So they see something positive out of the poison because they have the know-how, that understanding. Poison is the same, but you see the understanding changes. That's the tantric level of being able to transmute. Is this way good?
So transmutation comes from knowledge, understanding that poison, like anger or desire, can be transmuted.
That's why you see one begins to realize that actually poison as such is not so solid. See, normally when we begin to regard negativity as something quite concrete, but when you have really understanding, you see, then the understanding actually makes you realize that actually it is as impermanent as everything else is.
Now, Vajrasattva is central to Tantra, the deity that is central to Tantra. His whole being naturally demonstrates the principle of transmutation, in that he wears as ornaments all the neuroses as a nourishment for indestructible sanity.
Here, you see, I was teaching in Paris. You see, so you've got to give a little bit of background. In the room where I teach in Paris, there's a big picture of Vajrasattva, which is that one there. Can you see the Vajrasattva there?
Yeah.
Yeah, Vajrasattva. Can you go point out? That's Vajrasattva. We've taken a photograph of that one, and it's on, how do you say? It's slide transparency, and put with the put light behind it. So it's a big blown one up, very brilliant. So that was there. So I just pointed out my hand to that, as I said this, saying Vajrasattva, this, who is known in Tibetan as Dorje Sempa, is sometimes is the, how do you say, the embodiment of Tantra. Like Vajrasattva, Vajrayana. See, Vajrasattva is the Vajra being. Vajrayana is the Vajra vehicle. So the Vajrasattva is the embodiment of Tantra. Sometimes he's regarded as the chief of all the mandalas. The most important deity in Tantric mandala is Vajrasattva Dorje Sempa. Now when you look at him, you see, look at him. I mean, even the painting is actually quite good, you know. And this one is also Vajrasattva. Is when you look at him, it's so white, color whiteness. It depicts the inherent purity. Purity. And it's like really very pure. You see? It's like risen out of, you see? It's freed. You understand? Then he wears ornaments. I mean, he's kind of ornaments. But ornaments are interesting with this one, is that ornaments is not like is not clothed like an ordinary being. It's kind of more like a prince, or like jewels and ornaments, which are what is called Sambhogakaya ornaments. The point here is that there is a meaning to these ornaments. If you go into more the detailed iconography in the signification, that each of the ornaments represents a transmutation. What it really is saying is that, you see, these ornamentations are actually a kind of an indication, or kind of a statement. It's a statement saying that actually we do not have to give up possession. We do not have to give up poison. Or we do not have to, how do you say, abandon negativity or anger or desire. We can actually wear them as ornaments if you have the wisdom and the power of transmutation. Clear? So that what I don't know whether you understand now, that three main principles of Tantra that we've spoken so far is, the first is Tantra is energy. Is the pure energy. It's connecting with that. You understand? Pure energy of the mind, pure energy of the universe. The connecting with it. And the vehicle of connection is to your pure perception and entering into that sacred world. Okay? Is it clear? And then, what was it? There's another third point, but I forget now. What's the last point?
Transmutation.
Transmutation, yes. Or rather, you do not have to abandon anything. You do not have to negate any. You don't have to, give. You can transmute everything. Everything is transmutable. Everything is workable. In a sense, you have pure perception because everything is workable. You see, it's like when you have a solution to a problem, then you don't panic so much. You understand? It's like that's like this. Is when you're understanding, then the pure, Do you understand? Sometimes pure view is that when you realize, even though there's a problem, you begin to see the solution. So therefore one doesn't panic so much. Therefore one has a kind of a more balanced view, more pure view.
You might ask, why waste your time on the Hinayana level? Why not just get straight into Tantra? But sometimes we are not ready, and we don't have the capacity to transmute. So first we need to be mindful and refrain from negative actions, rather than attempting to transmute straight away. Like if you were walking on fire, if you don't know how to walk, that's asking for trouble. It does not matter whether the vehicle is lower or higher, it's which level you are on.
Which vehicle you're using.
It's what you can handle. So in Buddhism, you try to learn the different levels so that when you reach to a tantric level, you use those principles more realistically.
See, the thing is, when you reach to the tantric level, all other previous vehicles are all inclusive into that. Or inclusive. Or inclusive in that. Like, for example, you cannot have a tantric vision without the principle of Hinayana and Mahayana already, how do you say, inclusively, the essence of it. That's why in Tantra the stress always is realization of egolessness and realization of emptiness, and from the out of state of compassion that one generates. In fact, one of the main things that I'm going to teach when I teach in this course, in this short course, is the practice of generation, the visualization, and the practice of mantra. These are the two key things in Tantra practice which we shall use.
Come now to the principal practices of Tantric Buddhism: visualization, mantra, and samadhi.
Samadhi is the state of meditation, the state of the deity. Entering the state of the deity.
In actuality, all these three have to be one. They represent the body, the speech, and the mind.
See? Your body is like the visualization, the perception. The speech, the voice, the sound, that's the mantra. The communication. The wisdom mind, that's the samadhi. There all has to be one. I think before I'd like to mention something. Or I think maybe I'll keep this for the weekend. I'll keep this for the weekend. Yeah. I think it's because when we talk about healing, I like to discuss a little bit about it. You see, in the psychotherapy, if you look into the psychotherapy generally, I've been recently talking with many of them, many kind of, prominent therapists in the field, asking their view. Normally I don't read books. I just ask when I meet the people at different conferences. So I ask them to explain to me in a nutshell what's the main principle. And in that, you see, one of the main thing is what is the withdrawn self or the repressed self, which happens maybe at your childhood or wherever, Then there is also called the strategical self, which is the strategical self. Strategy, like a military strategy, huh? 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 What? Psychological. Huh?
She's just pronouncing it differently.
Strategic, okay. Unfortunately, I'm not English. Strategic or strategically, what do you say?
Okay. Fine, it's fine.
Huh?
The word is fine.
Okay. Self. Strategical self. That is normally what happens is this. You see, when you always act, that comes from pain. You've been hurt, so you act from that experience of pain. That you act, or you're open or not open. You see? That's the strategical self. So when you do teletherapy or healing, you're trying to bring the two together, or rather try to release or free that withdrawn self to be in touch with your fundamental self. From a Buddhist point of view, be in touch with that fundamental bodhicitta, and to realize that actually there's nothing to defend. There's no need to defend, no need to attack. In fact, when you are in touch with your fundamental self, in that state that you do not have to resort to any of the strategy. You can actually let go. You understand? There are certain moments. In fact, these are some of the principles of Tantra also. The principle of surrender comes not from of a kind of a surrender to some kind of principle, some kind of a, like a student surrendering to the teacher, or the servant surrendering to the master. It's nothing to do with that. It's from an understanding. So I'll talk about this more.